Going to try filming something here. Let's see if this works in this exhibit. It's a bit weird. Don't know, I'll have to see how that looks in the video afterwards. But looking at funeral votive offerings, I believe is the correct word. It's actually very good. It's very well made, the whole exhibit. Coming back, as you can see, it's very well made for children, for adults, and getting the wee little buggers to actually think about the whole of human, including Neanderthal culture and history, and how we treat our dead and whatnot. One of the most interesting finds from England was that the Great Plague victims, the Black Plague victims, were often buried quite carefully in a particular direction, with, if I remember rightly, the heads facing east towards Jerusalem. They were not thrown haphazardly into the great big mass pits, even though they were in fact mass graves because of the number of victims. But they were instead laid out carefully and laid out well, in ways which honoured them. The fact that we build our idea of what has been human into a very strong idea that is simply not just determined by biology. And if you don't quite get where I'm aiming towards, think of all the science fiction stories about how aliens would be treated. They would be treated, in many cases, like humans. They would be treated like us, because being human is not just biology, it's also a great big idea. And it's an idea which surpasses the biology in many ways. Quite good exhibits on the archaeological finds and whatnot. And keeping on going down this long spiral, which takes us right down through the whole museum, down a few floors, and past lots of different exhibits. It's a very well laid out museum. Now this is really interesting because it's an exhibit not on people as such, but on a little rodent called the Persian desert mouse, or the Persian gird, Meriones persicus, which cushions its burrow with flower petals. These rodents are probably responsible for the large amount of pollen in a Neanderthal grave in the Shanidia cave in Iraq, which is what that poster just said. I just quoted the poster for that very last sentence. That would mean to me that what they're talking about here is that some of the archaeological evidence may have been misunderstood at first. Large amount of pollen in the grave, one would think lots of flowers put into the grave, were lots of flowers. But what if the flowers, what if the pollen was added afterwards to a Neanderthal grave by rodents such as this? And there used to be a lot of rodents like this all around the place. You had field hamsters. Field hamsters are at the very least twice as big as your average gold hamster. In actual fact, they're about 3 or 4 times as big, really. They're quite big. European field hamsters are black and white, not that gold colour that you get in gold hamsters. And they lived all over Europe until basically being wiped out in most areas by modern farming practices. They're called korenwolf in Dutch, meaning corn wolf, meaning that they stole a whole lot of corn grain. They had quite an effect on human agriculture. So whether these rodents are playing with our minds, basically by mucking up the archaeological evidence, is a very interesting question. I'm not sure, I haven't read anything about that beforehand, and I've only just seen that for the first time. Do please pardon me, paleoanthropology is not my area. In fact, I'm not quite sure what my area is supposed to be, but never mind, we'll just carry on. Again, we've got a whole lot of interesting exhibits here for children and for adults. about human skills and skill sets, human tools and tool sets, weaving, sewing, rope making, and so on. And more exhibits, quite well made. Getting people to think about the tool chests of the different cultures, of the different archaeological cultures. Another good exhibit, and this time on the genetics, and also on a fair few other aspects of the Neanderthals. Gattaca, the base pairs of the DNA, how the DNA was taken out of Neanderthal finds, archaeological finds, and what the range of colonization by the Neanderthals looked like. The red is Neanderthals, okay? So you're looking at different ice ages and whatnot, and how they changed, where the ice affected badly the range of colonization possible in Europe. And then after the Neanderthals come modern Homo sapiens, humans. They coexist for a while in some places. The modern humans are orange, okay? The Neanderthals are red. You can see the range of colonization by the Neanderthals. And then it slowly diminishes owing to different ice ages, I assume. And then looking throughout history as the time goes on, the shrinkage right down to a few places, followed by modern human expansion, the orange colour, and then the last areas left, another ice age. How would Neanderthals look to us today? This particular exhibit here answers a wee bit of that question, showing how a Neanderthal might have looked back in his own time, and how he would look if he was simply given a shave, a haircut, and modern clothes. Another good exhibit. And a Homo erectus skeleton, roughly about what? 5 feet in height or so? I'm not quite sure. A bit less than 5 feet in height, standing vertically. Showing human diversities and where some of the main sites of archaeological findings of the truly ancient proto-primate or proto-human ancestors lived and were found. You have all the South African findings and finding near Mozambique and so on. The findings in Tanzania and Kenya, including the Olduvai Gorge, the Olduvai Paranthropus bozai, Homo habilis, Australopithecus afarensis, Laetoli man, Paranthropus bozai, these findings. Then going up into Somalia, Ethiopia, the whole region around there, and all the findings up that way. Looking back at the Gattaca project, now from a low level, on a brilliant part of the exhibit. Can you see that clearly there? I'll zoom in on it. Take a close look at this person. It's actually an exhibit again of how a Neanderthal might look today to us in modern clothing. It's quite brilliantly done as part of the whole museum, and actually walked straight past it without realizing at first. The Neanderthal exhibit, you can see why I wasn't paying attention, I have to admit. And I wasn't being my usual paranoid self of checking out every little factor in the entire environment. You can see why I would have walked just past them if I was intent on something else. Actually, a very, very good part of the exhibit to get people thinking about Neanderthals. They weren't some sort of primitive ape, but a different version of us, and only a slightly different version. It's a very, very well done exhibit. We're looking now at finds from the Neandertal Valley. That is right where we are right at the moment. We've got the various work instruments, scrapers, slicers, that kind of thing. You've got various bones of a mother, father and child. The original finds, how it would have all looked, a bit of a reconstruction. As you can see, it's really nice countryside around here in the whole Neandertal Valley. I guess back at the time of the archaeological finds and before that, a lot of this area would have been filled in by limestone. There is the museum. You can see the museum quite well there, with its spiral-like structure. I'm now going to walk up to the parking area. Saying goodbye to the museum.